Alrighty, good evening. Welcome to the CREEDCAST. We are, of course, recording here on Thursday, the 11th June, which means this is your SQUADS show, your round 14 preview coming up for your Port Adelaide Footy Club's big Saturday night clash against the top two Sydney Swans, one of the real pace setters of the competition this year, alongside Fremantle, and we get our first look at them on Saturday night. Thankfully at home, looking forward to getting down there very, very much. We'll get into a preview of that in the latter part of the episode, a couple of news bits to get to. But first of all, good evening, Jamie, talent of the podcast. Welcome to Thursday. Welcome to SQUADS. How are we doing?
Howdy, howdy. Yeah, not doing too bad. I am sore. Work has been busy, but it's been good. I've been out in the sun, but getting a full body workout every day, basically. So, yeah, no, fantastic. Looking forward to the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, get a few kind of muscle relaxant beverages into the system across the weekend after a hard week on the tools. It's
Yeah,
the change of career.
yeah.
It has been beautiful weather this week for us in South Australia.
It has.
It's been warm and toasty in the Barossa. Some of the outdoor work I've been doing has had me like close, not quite pulling off the hoodie, but close to, which is pretty. You can't ask for better conditions in early June. So not looking like we're maybe getting that on Saturday, but we'll get to that in the back part of the episode. Looks like we could be. I mean, I know next week we're looking at a lot of rain, and Saturday could be a bit around for our game as well. But first of all, a few news items to get to regarding our Port Adelaide Footy Club, our historic club that we are immensely proud of. And of course, I think one of the first things that we're going to talk about tonight is Tim Evans was, of course, elevated to the Australian Rules Football Hall of Fame earlier this week. He's already a part of the South Australian Football Hall of Fame and the Tasmanian Football Hall of Fame, of course, being a native Tasmanian before his journey. His football journey ended up with us for the predominant part of his career, obviously. He gets elevated, though, to the Australian Football Hall of Fame, which is well deserved. I think it's one of those things that sometimes when we look at records in the AFL/VFL and see the 1,000 goal club mentioned, and we don't see Tim Evans' name in there. And same with the games record numbers that we see some of our Port Adelaide players get, removed from in the AFL, VFL. We get a little bit, antsy about it because we think these players fully deserve their place in these discussions. And so it's very, very good to see a player of Tim Evans' stature elevated to the Australian Football Hall of Fame. And we're all well aware of him and his exploits, of course. 289 total games for 1,019 goals, 993 of those in Port Adelaide colours, of course. In his 59 games at Geelong, he kicked 26. Of course, his goals per game average went well up at Port Adelaide, and that was because he actually started his career as a backman, and even in his first year at Port Adelaide, he was a backman until, of course, the great John Cale kind of recognised his kicking ability, and they had some need up forward, and he threw him up forward, and clearly he didn't look back with kicking almost 1,000 goals in Port colours in a couple hundred games. So for me, Jamie, it's a point of pride to see his name mentioned along with the others that were not elevated this week, and hopefully it's caused a few around a few fans around the league, younger fans of other clubs who may not have heard his name, just do a quick Google and kind of see the kind of numbers, because when you see those numbers there, they're staggering. And of course, he was a 4-time premiership player for the club as well. 6 times SANFL leading goal kicker. I think he had 146 goal season in their summer as well. He was immense and consistent for those that 10-year, 11-year career at Port Adelaide, and he's well deserving of his place in the really like the extent, the Mount Rushmore kind of Hall of Fame that is the Australian Rules Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's a very proud moment for Port Adelaide. It's just yet another piece of history that gets recognised at the national level, because thankfully both the AFL and the Australian Football Hall of Fame committee recognise that we are one club and that we do preside over our own history. Just the lineage of forwards at Port Adelaide as well. Tim Evans was obviously well before my time and your time in his playing days. And obviously, one of my dad's favorite players, or sorry, my dad's favorite player was Scott Hodges. So, that generation had him as the focal point for the Port Adelaide Football Club. But just to be lucky enough to have him coming off the back of Tim Evans, who had an illustrious career, like you said, kicking over 1,000 goals in his career. Just how blessed we are as a football club to attract these players, and, across the journey, maybe a bit of money is involved as well. But the culture that you build and the talent that you attract to represent your football club and join the effort to win as many premierships as possible. And he won his fair share, like you said. Very interesting journey to be recognised in several different Hall of Fames now because of his exploits in different parts of Australia. And when you were saying about state league players from yesteryear prior to the VFL changing its name to AFL, and sometimes we get a bit antsy about 1,000 Goal Club, and then the game's record. There's a discussion about Craig Bradley at the moment, whether he should actually be recognised, and it just it sprung a thought in my mind while you were chatting, just about how in cricket they've classified first class exploits and list A. They have that categorization so that if you're making centuries at Sheffield Shield level, for example, the national competition in Australia for long form cricket, your record can still be compared, listed alongside people playing first class cricket in England or South Africa or what have you, and records can be broken at a first class level. I'd really like the AFL or the AFL Commission, or I would really like an Australian Rules Football Commission to be kind of reignited. I know there was something like that in the past that the AFL kind of digested, absorbed, so that they could be custodians of the game. But I'd really like there to be some classification of first class football, if you will, for the point of the discussion, where sure you can you have your VFL, AFL because one competition became another and you can have those records, but it would be good from an Australian point of view to be able to go, well, actually in first class football, and then you have 1,000 Goal Club across Australia, you have your waffle. I'm sure there was 1,000 goal kickers in the waffle, and then the likes of Tim Evans, for example, and then you can actually see a representation of Australian rules football across the country, and it doesn't have to be pigeonholed as VFL, AFL. Just a thought bubble. Probably will never happen because Vic bias and all of that, but players like Tim Evans absolutely deserve to be recognised because, we are parochial South Australians. I think we who have grown up in South Australia, and definitely generations before us, probably believe that the SANFL was on par with the VFL across the course of history. Perhaps State of Origin records maybe tip that maybe that's the best kind of argument for which league was better across history, but we know for a fact that the SANFL and the Waffle in its own right were very talented, very high-end leagues, and therefore these players probably should have been recognised a long time ago, but it's good that they're finally being recognised now, and it would be nice to see the records, not even necessarily goals, games played, whatever it may be, disposals, these things listed together and classified in a level like cricket does.
No, it's a very, very good little tangent there, because I we both love history, and I obviously studied, that was my major in college. It's something that I have a lot of passion for, and kind of how history is seen and written is often, it's often the victors want to tell their story, and the cynic in me can say the AFL is kind of the victors wanting to write their story, and that it works for them. That Scott Pendlebury has a record that he can break. Whereas if we were going by like a proper historical rules commission and they were looking at the Craig Bradley record, they'd be like, well, we can't market that because he may not get there. So there's the cynic in me. But yeah, I do like that idea of yours to kind of find a way to classify it and make a proper historical record that we can kind of live by and recognize a lot of these guys, whether across the, because names like Tim Evans, otherwise this time that he comes up in the Hall of Fame recognition is very, very important and welcomed. But you want to see it kind of mentioned a little bit more when the 1,000 goal, whenever those 1,000 goal lists are printed, that his name's never there, and it should be in some form of proper historical record that is popularly known as well. He's in historical record, but it's about having what the zeitgeist recognizes as historical record, and that's what we want to see is like these guys that are recognized more. Of course, Craig Bradley got recognized for his exploits once he was over there as well, but his record is not known because of the fact that only a part of it happened over there. So it's a very, very good point to bring up.
Yeah. Well, just to finish on that too, like a bit like what you're saying is this week and on the night, Tim Evans gets recognized just from his point of view. But after this week, after the night, outside of South Australia, he'll get forgotten very quickly. Whereas if you had those historical records readily available and in rotation in discussions of Australian rules football, even during AFL seasons and telecasts and whatnot, then it just helps preserve their legacy. Whether it be Tim Evans or any other person recognised from a state level prior, across history before it became a national competition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The name like Scott Hodges probably deserves. There's a lot of Port players, even go back to Russell Ebert as well, like his professionalism and what he was not. I mean, he's kind of up there a bit anyway, but his professionalism and who he was as a player was like often recognised as light years ahead of a lot of others in that time. And Port Adelaide kind of has a history of kind of just being pace setters in that sense, and so we want to kind of see that history get recognised. So that's why I like to bring it up, and I know you have a great appreciation for it as well, and why we like to kind of bring these things up on the podcast when the time suits, because it is important. A lot of lessons from history and events from history and characters of history need to be talked about. Of the ultimate record going forward is kind of the oral history and how you pass down stories to everyone, and keep the memories alive of the good things, like Tim Evans kicking absolute bags. Speaking of some history as well, of course, if you're watching on YouTube, I'll leave my head away. You can see a short sleeve copy of the heritage prison bars that we're going to be wearing in our home showdown in a few weeks. So there's a little bit of Guernsey news for the next 5-10 minutes here on the podcast. So obviously we learnt last week we're going to be wearing the 1914 version of the prison bars in the showdown this week to celebrate that great Champions of Australia team. And just to briefly touch on their record, it was obviously they went 12-0 in the Sandful that year. Their closest result in that year was winning a game by 21 points. They often won by 30 or more, some pretty hefty victories. Their points for at the end of that 12-game season was 1,068 to 510. So they basically over doubled their opposition across the course of the season. And when you look at the rest of the teams, it was all they all had basically actually sub 50% percentages, which is probably mainly because they came up against Port a couple of times across the journey. They then won the grand final by 79 points against North Adelaide, so winning the Sandful undefeated. They then won the Championship of Australia against Carlton, who travelled over to Adelaide Oval to play as the VFL representatives, and won comfortably there as well by 34 points, 9-16-70 to 5-6-36. Could have been more, to be fair. And then when at the back end of the year they played an exhibition match, Port Adelaide versus South Australia, and the South Australian team essentially made up of the talent of the other 6 teams in the Sandful, they won that by 58 points, absolutely demolishing the South Australian representative team 14-14-98 to 5-10-40. So this was a team that literally defeated everything that could be put before it. And like there was no team, like, the only opportunity that they could have done that they didn't do was maybe get a Victorian representative team against them, but they beat the Victorian champions comfortably. They beat the composite South Australian side comfortably, and of course, across the course of a season against everything the Sandful opposition could throw at them, they won comfortably across the season again. Their closest result being a 21-point win in that season. So that's what that Guernsey means. That's why that design means a lot, and that's why if you ever buy a Port Adelaide Guernsey in the last 10 years, I believe that inside the nape of the neck, there's of course all the premierships listed, and there's the Champions of Australia listed in there as well, and that 1914 one being the last one. So an incredible team to recognise. It's kind of like, some people might go, well, that was all that time ago, but it's kind of like, Sir Donald Bradman's records or the Collingwood teams that won those 4 in a row in the VFL. It's like, no one's really been able to, match that kind of effort since. So unless you do, you've got to celebrate those. And the fact they were just so much better than everyone in the Sandful kind of speaks to just how much better they were. Even they mentioned in the synopsis of the game against the South Australian composite side that Port Adelaide's just fitness and preparation just in the last quarter, kind of just I think they won the last quarter by 40 odd points and steamed away from the South Australian composite side. And it was just the basic, they were just fitter, faster, stronger all year, right from the start to that October exhibition match. So that's what we're celebrating with that Guernsey. And again, Jamie, it's a point of pride.
It certainly is. And, reading out those margins, thinking way back, over 100 years ago, scoring was nothing like what it was these days either. So to put on these scores, it just really shows that we were a cut above the rest. And just going through the announcement on the Port Adelaide website, there's a quote from Matthew Richardson here that goes, "The prison bar Guernsey has been the fabric of the Port Adelaide Football Club since 1902. It's not just a Guernsey. It represents the players who shaped Port Adelaide's history and, just as importantly, a community built on hard work and resilience, the people who gave this club its identity." And that's the exact beauty of it. I mean, the funny thing is about the different iterations, we cop a bit of shit for our different Guernseys pre-1902 and whatnot, but then there are those subtle variations to the prison bar Guernsey. But such is life, such is the world. Even Collingwood has changed the thickness of their stripes across history. So I just love the fact that we can do things like this and we can celebrate portions of our own history in such a way. And in this example, sure, cynics would say it's a merchandising opportunity, but I think that's underselling how much Port Adelaide Football Club appreciates its history. And the whole point of pushing to wear the prison bar Guernsey on the national stage is to do exactly this, and that is to acknowledge our history and pay respect to the people who have worn that Guernsey in different portions of our successful history.
Yeah, that's why I was so passionate about the prison bar push, and a lot of people would sometimes say to me, "Oh, what would you like about maybe a teal version of it?" And I was just like, "No, because what we're doing, if you'd had an away version, but the one that we want to wear at least once a year is to honour that history, and it would be to sully it, would be to colour it differently. It's not that I'm against. I obviously love the teal. Yeah. If you're looking on YouTube, there's teal lighting and a lot of teal in the background here, but when you're honouring history, to sully it by changing colours or trying to appease others, then you're not honouring that history at all. That's why we wanted to push for it so much.
You're compromising.
Compromising for stupid reasons as well. Like that, I've talked to you off air before, and I'll mention it on air for those that are listening. One of the things I want to do in the future is get a little bit of kind of documentary style things about the history of our club. And I think one of the interesting portions of that little bit of history in the last 10 years was that fight to wear the bars, because it was ridiculous to have to try to compromise to really one megalomaniac's just complete idolization of his own club in Eddie Maguire and Collingwood, and not realizing that you can allow another club to celebrate the history without selling your own. It was a really weird part of the AFL's history, and again is one of those things that makes us complain about the Bush League at times, but that's why I'm so proud of the club that they stuck fat and eventually kind of wore down the Eddie Maguire influence at Collingwood. And once Collingwood got a few maybe just easier minds in place, they kind of just went, yeah, like what the fuck are we doing here? And lo and behold, then we get to do this and have this opportunity to not just wear the prison bars, but then look at different historical areas of the prison bars and do something like we're doing this year with the 1914 one, which of course it's a short sleeve in the background for me, but a lot of people are probably aware and have seen that the long sleeve version is a copy of the long sleeves back in 1914. That was obviously the black and white prison bar, but there was just full white sleeves on it as well. A really unique looking Guernsey. It's been hot off the shelves at Alberton, by the way. I went down and could not get my hands on one in my size. I obviously being over 6 foot and in my 30s with and a penchant for a beer. I need one that's when Macron sizing with the Italian sizing is a little slimmer, so I need one that's in the XLs, and I couldn't get one in my size, but they were taking down that. They actually, one of the ladies down there is obviously one of the regular faces at the Port store, kind of saw me looking and said, "Oh, if you're looking for a certain size, let me grab your name and number, and we'll give you a ring," because they think they're going to be getting more in. So I've got my name and number down, waiting for the long sleeve because I really want that one, but I still grab the short sleeve just in case because I wanted to kind of have that as part of the collection, and it's a beautiful Guernsey in its own right. But it's a unique piece, the one with the long sleeves, and I'm we'll talk about another Guernsey in a moment, but I'm kind of glad the club are leaning into retailing long sleeve Guernseys because they've been popular in all facets this year.
They really have, yeah, and I guess it's no surprise because, the average Joe doesn't have a big set of guns to show off. Unless, I know a lot of people wear the short sleeve over shirts and jumpers and stuff like that. But yeah, some people are just more comfortable wearing the long sleeve while still, showing their fandom. And the white sleeves is interesting. It perhaps, and for those that don't know, not to delve into a big history lesson right now, but we obviously had our blue hooped Guernsey, and then we had the magenta and stuff like that. And the whole reason why we went to black and white was purely down to ink costs, but as well as that, the rest of the SANFL competition, the teams were either had blue or red in them, so it was a way to differentiate. But just going back on the ink cost, perhaps that was a reason why the sleeves were left white, because just not to blow their black ink budget. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, that was part of the reason why we went to black and white, was to save on ink costs and to differentiate ourselves from the rest of the competition that we were playing in. And then obviously the prison bar, obviously the design was to honour the wharf pylons, which I'm sure everyone is aware of, and the prison bar connotation from opposition fans kind of stuck because we wore it as a badge of pride. And yeah, again, we could wax lyrical. We could probably do a whole episode on the prison bar Guernsey. Just to go back on a notion of the putting teal in it. I'm absolutely on the same page as you, as you know, that there is no compromise when you're honouring your history and tradition. It kind of irks me when Port Adelaide supporters do throw up that compromise, because I'm of the belief that we should be able to wear it whenever the fuck we feel like. Not that I'm advocating to wear it full time. I think that's an interesting discussion, and there's merit to the discussion and the debate. But I'm proud of the Port Adelaide Power chapter and the teal and the Guernseys that we now wear and represent ourselves that way. But yeah, I think we should wear the prison bar Guernsey whenever the fuck we want. It is our Guernsey, and hypothetically, if there wasn't a Collingwood Football Club in the competition that sought us, wanted us to come into it, if there was no Collingwood, we would be wearing the prison bar Guernsey. It is our Guernsey, and we're obviously very proud of it. And again, I just love the fact that we get to honour the Invincibles and there'll be other periods in time that we get to honour, but in this occasion, it's the Invincibles, which is a very noteworthy team for all the the reasons that you listed off the top of this segment. I need to hold myself back because I love the Port Adelaide Football Club, obviously. I love the Prison Bars. When the drop came, the announcement, like I messaged you straight away. It looks great. I love the thin pylons. Just because, like, it is very close. It gets closer to like an all black Guernsey, which is very intimidating, I think. Just that black. I love it.
Yeah. No, I'm really, really excited to see how it looks in the flesh and worn on the flesh of obviously our great champions that'll hopefully go out and win a showdown for us in a couple of weeks. So
Hope so,
seeing it in
yeah.
person like that will look really, really good, and hopefully Aaliyah's rocking the long sleeves and all that stuff. So
you could probably put your house on it.
Yeah. With the weather it's going to be in a couple of weeks, very, very likely.
Just Aaliyah just loves the long sleeve as well.
Yeah. But there is earlier in the year, I think, did he actually come out in long sleeves in the teal one? And that's a good transition to just a small bit of news before we get to the preview part. Obviously, the club, I think it was yesterday, announced that due to strong feedback in favour of the gather round fully charged teal Guernsey that wore against St Kilda earlier this year, that we will be wearing it as our away strip for. I don't have it in front of me. I should have, but three of our remaining away matches. The teal Guernsey is essentially replacing the white and being called our Clash Guernsey for the back end of the year. So that's really, really exciting. I don't remember who. I think someone messaged us on Instagram back when this Guernsey first dropped at the start of the year and said he or she, I can't remember again. If you're listening, feel free to reach out and say that was me. But they said that they'd heard in whispers that this was a possibility already based on the strong feedback at that point. And obviously,
yes, I remember that message now. Yeah. It was a guy. I know that much.
Okay. Yeah. I had a brief look through the inbox trying to find who, and I just couldn't find the message. So I apologize, but someone did kind of say they reckon that this is going to happen, and clearly the feedback was there that this Guernsey is quite beloved and is going to feature for us in a way, and aesthetically quite pleasing on gather round night. The feet football maybe not so much, but the Guernsey itself was. So hopefully a win upcoming in that Guernsey at some point soon, and it's exciting to kind of see the club kind of respond to that feedback and maybe go through the processes they needed to kind of make sure that Clash Guernsey would work for a few games going forward. So yeah, I'm very, very excited to see us run around in that one a couple more times because I really, really enjoyed the aesthetics of that, the shade of teal that it was, and all of that stuff. I'm very, very excited.
I'm excited too. I feel that we should have been utilizing teal as a away/clash strip more often in the past. I know we did maybe for 1 or 2 years, maybe around that 2016, 2017 period. Was it just pre-season? Yeah. Wow. But as AFLW fans would already know, we wear a teal away strip in the women's competition anyway. So not that these are the same, but that teal one that our girls wear is much like that pre-season one that the guides wore many years ago, and I didn't really see why we went away from that. There was the silver one, which I think was a bit of that black and white pushback around the discussion of the prison bar Guernsey. Perhaps, I don't know that for sure. That seemed to be the vibe though. But yeah, I'm all for utilizing teal in an away strip. And yeah, the fully charged Guernsey is pretty popular. So it's a good decision, I think. It's going to help in the Port store. It's going to make us a bit more money, of course. There is I think there is a little bit of critiquing of the fact that it's not the teal, our base teal, I guess you could say. But I think that's just taking our colours hypercritically. We're obviously English Premier League fans, and while clubs are proud of their history, tradition, and their colours, they still leave room for expression, and changing it up for the purposes of away trips and merchandise sales. So yeah, no qualms, no qualms. I look forward to seeing it again in action, and yeah, hopefully we get wins in it.
Yeah. Yeah, anyone that knows me knows I'm a Liverpool fan, and I've got a fair collection of Liverpool jerseys in my closet from basically the late '90s all the way through to the last year, and there is a lot of shades of red there. For one, a team that is very, very proudly just red, there's a lot of shades of red. So I look at that the teal kind of discussion is pretty similar, as long as it's kind of looking good. And they clearly went with the fully charged idea was actually a nod to the fact this is a slightly different teal. This is a cool teal. Like they lent into that marketing of it a bit. So very, very excited.
Yeah, it's teal on charge, like it's been plugged
Exactly.
in.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's lit up like all your fucking devices light up when you're trying to sleep. Yeah, no, excited. Lots of exciting Guernsey news around the club this year. It's yeah, tough on the wallet, but very, very exciting to see it all in the store. All right, let's get to a preview for the last part of the podcast here. Of course, the reason we're here, but we do love talking all that news. Of course, at the top, we mentioned your Port Adelaide Footy Club playing against Sydney at Adelaide Oval on Saturday night, 7:05 p.m. kick or bounce. I'm in World Cup mode already. Big, probably the biggest squad show we've had this year for ins, outs, debuts, kind of working out what the plan is going forward. So, of course, the news is, and we'll start with the big one, the debutant Xavier Bammett, who was drafted in the mid-season draft just a couple of weeks ago, makes his debut, which we're all very excited for, and a lot we're kind of expecting pretty imminently. So he comes in. Harrison Ram, who was one of our mid-season draftees from last year, comes in for his second game of his career. Of course, he played at the back end of last year, as all three mid-season draftees from 2025 played in the Boak Mega Bowl in the last game of the season, and then of course Kane Farrell comes back in as well. The Josh Ly's injured and in protocols for his concussion sustained last week, and Jacob Ware and Christian Moraes are omitted. So hard luck for Ware and Moraes, but I'm very, very excited to kind of talk about the guys that are coming in. First of all, Xavier Bammett, of course, comes in. You kind of look at that and go, he's in for. Well, you can't really say who's in and out for each one because it's there's going to be some shifts, I think, in who's where, and you can even look at the side already and see that Jace Burgoyne's been named on the wing. And so where players play, but you kind of sit there and go, Moraes in, Moraes out, Bammett in is how I'm kind of looking at it.
I see it a similar way too. He may end up with your 56% time on ground that Moraes had finished up on against West Coast, because the 5-man interchange bench is everyone isn't getting the same minutes across the board. Clearly, there's some strategy there, and just in regards to Christian Moraes, shout out to Simon again. Obviously, as we mentioned in the review show, mentioned that he was probably going a bit so-so, and due for a spell, so to speak. Although he didn't say that, but just highlighting the fact that he's been a bit down. And, I put across my point of view in the review show. Similar sentiments with Jacob Ware, obviously leaving himself open to being omitted. So we get some other guys who get a shot, and it is really let's try them out and see what they've got type of year. And I'm excited. For all the inclusions. Happy that Kane Farrell's back, and very surprised to see Harrison Ram being selected. Although, like I said to you earlier today, I didn't actually consider how tall Sydney have been playing.
Yeah. Yeah, that is something to talk about in a moment as well. Harrison Ram comes in, and interestingly enough, obviously, just we talk about how the selections are written on the team sheet often and how accurate they can be, but it's just funny looking at the team sheet. The Todd Marshall is currently listed down back, so he won't play. I
Yeah.
mean, we've obviously had all the news last week was that he's getting shifted forward, and I think that'll be the case. But he's been listed down back because maybe that's just where his name was on the sheet in the last saved draft of the list that was sent to the AFL for listing. So Harrison Ram coming in is obviously very exciting. We were kind of excited for him at the start of the year, and he copped some injuries at the front half of the year, and has kind of just been on the outer, kind of biding his time, but. Radaglia comes back in the last couple of weeks and played really, obviously best on ground for basically everyone last week. Perfect 10 coaches votes, perfect 10 votes by us as well. Aaliyah just doing Aaliyah things. Todd Marshall getting shifted forward. Brandon Thatcher just seems to be a completely, odd man out at this point, and I don't think he's going to get a look in unless
was going to have
injury.
that discussion.
I just don't think he gets a look in unless injury crisis bites and he's fit in the sandful. He's not getting in over Radaglia at this point. He's not getting in over Aaliyah. And, I guess it remains to be seen how Harrison Ram goes, but they're giving Harrison Ram a look first. And I mean, we're all pretty excited for the kind of the body that Harrison Ram is. He's still very young, development to come, but he's already showing a lot of promising signs. So you just look at it and go, even in a side that is maybe missing a bit of key back kind of, depth. Zach Thatcher still hasn't got a shot this year. So it's an interesting one. I'm very excited for Ram, but it is an interesting discussion to have as a side note to that.
Yeah. It's alarm bells for his career, to be honest. And because he's been playing SANFL for most of the year, it's not like he's been in and out with injury. It just makes you think how severe his back concerns have been, and this all started from a gym accident on the precipice of season 2025. So really unfortunate for him if that is the root cause of why he may only be able to perform at an SANFL level. To think that, we've tried Todd Marshall back instead of giving him first crack as a third tool, if you will. And now when coming up against a tall forward line in Sydney, they decide to look to the future and expose Harrison Ram, who, like you said, did have a fantastic preseason by all accounts. Asava Radaglia had a press conference and he reiterated that too. And on the topic of Ram being selected kind of over him, if he wasn't to be injured. So very, very interesting what happens. I'm not sure of the contract status with BZT, but it'll be very interesting if he is out of contract, which he's been around for a few years, so I would imagine he is. It'd be very interesting to see if he's still on the list at the end of the year, because if he can't get in, I'll rephrase that. If they've decided to pick a Todd Marshall over you, and we understand that there was an offensive side of things that contributed to that decision. If they're choosing Todd Marshall over you as a third tall backman, and now with a taller opposition forward line, they're going for someone who's much younger than you. Yeah, it doesn't bode well. I wouldn't have thought, unfortunately, for BCT, who objectively did show promising signs, I think particularly in his first season with Port Adelaide Football Club. Some notable opponents that he kept to fairly minimal impact across that first season, 2024, I think it was. And unfortunately, the injuries had struck, and perhaps that's really affected him.
Yeah, I think it's just a couple of times I've gone down and I had the chance to go to like an open training or something like that. Just watching him move is just it's a stark contrast to the play. Like he was never a like freight train speed or anything like that, but he just really he really looks somewhat laboured and kind of under the pressure of an injury like that. And when you look at Harrison Ram already having 7 centimeters on him, having the youth, having he already looks. Ramey still looks quite slender, but you can see there's some definition coming to him already. So when you look at him as a player, like obviously just you're projecting forward and projecting hopes and dreams onto young players, which is always I always say people should be careful with, but obviously just don't take it out on them via social media in DMs or anything like that, like the fuckheads do on far too often. But just myself as as someone who likes to be a mature football fan, looking ahead, you just go, look, 19 years old, 202 centimeters already, and looking like he's building well and has a skill set that we like. Yeah, he's already ahead of a BZT, and we're excited to kind of see what he can do. And as you said, I mean, just kind of having a quick look at what Sydney are looking like. They are tall down there. I keep forgetting. I don't forget, but I also keep forgetting that Charlie Curno's there. Does that make sense? It doesn't seem real that he's a Sydney player. Like I associated him. My brain just immediately disassociates him with Sydney every time I forget thing, and then I could be watching a Sydney game. I'm like, yeah, Charlie Curno's out there. It still looks weird. So like my brain just hasn't made that connection stick yet, even though obviously I know. Then obviously they've got Joel Amati down there and Logan McDonald. And just so they are playing quite tall down there, and it means that Radaglia can come in form, Lear can come in, and then you've got Harrison Ram to kind of as an extra help down there, and either you've all got all three of them out there, or there's a little bit of not that Lear and Radaglia are really going to rotate on, but you've got a third person to rotate through there as a help defender as well. As well as, the likes of Todd Marshall will drop back. He's the way he plays, and if the situation calls for it, if we're having to press high up the field or anything like that. And so having a bit of just tall depth around on the field, and particularly with that fifth bench spot, allowing a little bit more of that if you're not going to use a second ruckman or something like that, as we haven't in the last couple of weeks, that does allow that little bit of flexibility. So now we've got, Todd as an extra tall down forward, Harrison Rams an extra tall down back, and obviously with the rest of the squad around that, more or less shaping the way it has over the last few weeks. But it is a very, very dangerous Sydney forward line we come up against. Obviously, they're missing a couple of guys. There's no Tom Papley floating around or anything like that, but it's still a very, very dangerous side with both the forward line and as the help they get from up the field and the way they move the ball. They get we saw what they did last week and the way they surged back against St Kilda. The defense is going to have their work cut out for them, but I do look at it as a rebuilding side, as a very, very good test, both for the players that we've got in Alir and Radaglia, who are going to be around for the next couple of years. And then I'm actually really, really excited to see Harrison Ram have to come in for his second game and play against one of the top forward lines in the competition.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a bit trial by fire coming in for that Gold Coast game at the end of last season when they were, at the time, challenging for a top four spot, and it was their loss to us that denied them that top four spot. And wouldn't the Adelaide Football Club have much preferred to play them sucked in? But yeah, I mean, like the funny thing about Charlie Curnow is he's just been going about his business, and probably the fact that he is in a well-performing team who is playing as a team. I mean, he's like third on the Coleman Medal leaderboard at the moment. And then Joel Amati is in a similar position to Mitch Georgiadis, funnily enough, in the Coleman ladder. So, obviously being able to have a lot of opportunity at goal with the ball movement, like you mentioned, Sydney, one of the biggest handball meters gained teams in the competition, and they get a lot of inside 50s as such. And I guess they can spread defenses due to the fact that Logan McDonald has also been playing regularly for them this year. And then they've got a Hayden McLean, who is I rate as a very good second ruckman, and he always tends to kick goals against us historically, even in that run of us beating our winning streak against them, should I say. So that brings a lot of intrigue to me because while they are top and their team is still chock full of talent, they do have their injuries, and Tom McCartan is a huge blow. Justin McInerney is also a huge blow because as far as I understand, he's had a well-improved season, and he was already a pretty talented footballer prior to this season.
A lot of that movement through the middle kind of stuff, McInerney's been a big part of, whether the handball meters gain and all that, kind of the way they're moving the ball. He's shot to the top of their team importance list because of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so that's where I find my perspective in the intrigue. Like like teams at two kind of ends of the ladder and development. So I'm super keen to see how the experiment goes. I'm expecting Harrison Ram to give it a really good crack, as he did against Gold Coast. And sure, he had a couple of goals kicked on him versus Ben King, but I'm hoping, I think like you were alluding to with Radicalier and Alier there, hopefully we see Rammy maybe matched up on, say, a Logan McDonald a bit more often. And like Logan McDonald, high draft pick and quite a talented footballer, but not as in form as Charlie Curnow and Joel Amati. Just the fact that we can cover them is interesting to me. But it obviously doesn't end at the key position players. They've obviously got some formidable small players, particularly in Malcolm Roses, who is a fantastic pickup for them coming from the Gold Coast. Very impactful player. Hard to take the team sheet as it's listed on the AFL website because it's got the likes of James Rowbottom and Jake Lloyd listed on a half forward line as well. I haven't watched a lot of Sydney this year, to be honest, but historically we know James Rowbottom to be a kind of lockdown midfielder and Jake Lloyd to be a rebounding half-backer. So perhaps Dean Cox has shifted roles for them. I'm not privy to them like I probably should be right now doing a preview podcast, but what we do know is that the likes of Isaac Heaney will also go forward, and he's, I think, in the top 50 players for goal kicking. He's actually equal 19th for goals kicked this year, so much higher than I mentioned just before. So our backmen will have our work cut out for us, but like we discussed in the review, I think it is kind of our most solid third on the ground, most consistent, definitely. When you consider Darcy Byrne-Jones, senior leadership, seasoned player, coming off some pretty good form, and we both had him in our votes. Lockie Jones, who I think has had an improved year, and I think has improved his player rating this year from last year, and the timely return of Kane Farrell, who is an experienced campaigner. He is a weapon in his own right. I'm putting it on him again, like I think I have once before. I want to see him compete fiercely. Defenders defend first, in my opinion, and that's where I'll be looking to Kane Farrell to join in the contest with the rest of our backmen and making sure they're all holding firm and competing really strongly, both in the air and at ground level. Logan Evans is also worth a mention in that group of players too, who has quietly had a pretty impressive season, I think, as a young player as well. So the defense has got their work cut out for them. But like I said, I believe at this point in the season, it's our most solid and our most consistent line, and our defensive numbers would probably attest to that.
Yeah, it will be their biggest test of the year with how Sydney have been scoring and moving the ball. I mean, Sydney are obviously first in handball meters gained with almost 700 a game. But then they're second in the comp for they're second in the comp for kick meters gained as well. So giving them a total of like 6,700, 6,800 meters gained a game, which is far and away better than any other team. And like I said, their kick meters gained are second in the comp, while their handball meters gained are by far the best in the comp as well. So they're moving the ball well both ways, and particularly kind of not just the defense itself, defending the side that it is, but then it's defending like the team defense upfield, and that'll be the kind of the midfield. And that's where the inclusion of Bammett coming in, and then Mead still being in there as well. That kind of like higher up defense from the midfield side as well, stopping the run of your Nick Blakey's one of the top players in the competition for his movement down the field as well, and what he's doing. So it's not going to be the one-on-one defending. It's going to be the team defense up the field will particularly be tested like it hasn't been before with how Sydney are playing with the players in there. And, then that you kind of think about it and think about because I was disappointed when I see Murray's name taken out, but then when you look at it, a horses for courses kind of thing, it's like, well, Murray's may find himself just in a similar game last week where he just couldn't get because of the way the game's played. And we've seen, I think Jackson Mead is worthy of his spot again after last. I think he was okay last week, or actually pretty good last week considering he hadn't played for a while on the AFL side. Bammett comes in. You've just got a little bit more size and energy maybe in the midfield. And obviously Bammett's coming in quite raw for as far as AFL experience, but maybe it's just be like, a little bit of beginner's luck. He's going to be, he's got no scars.
He's an
from the
enigma at
AFL
this
yet.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all fucking Charlie and Always Sunny just wild card getting thrown in there in this one. So yeah, I mean it's going to be an interesting game in all three phases because that run and that style that Sydney play is going to be, we haven't seen it this year quite in the way that they play because obviously this is the first of the real top competing sides. Sydney and Freo being the real pace setters of the competition this year. We haven't played either of them yet, so this is a real good opportunity. I know we've played good sides, but we've played them at in moment Hawthorn, Geelong. Those are very very good sides and top four contenders themselves. But this is these two, Freo and Sydney, have broken away from the pack a bit in their ladder position, and this is the first time we get to see either of them. So kind of having to defend the full field game style that Sydney play is going to be. It's an interesting one. I'm glad it's at home. Let's put it that way. The first time we get to play them is at least on our deck, so there's a little bit of an away game enigma for them. Not that I think that'll bother them too much, being the side they are, but yeah, I'm glad it's on the home deck.
As am I. Hopefully throw them something different. Although the SEG is spoken about as a small ground. I think it's actually a bit bigger than it historically has been due to several upgrades to the ground, but still, they played it pretty well last year when they came to Adelaide Oval. So I just hope we come out with a bit more vigor than we did in that game because that was a hard watch. Moving on from the defence, a lot of
another Amati party would be nice, or the reverse Amati party, as it were.
Another reverse Amati party, yeah. But moving on from the
6, just to remind people of what that was.
Yeah. For those who are unaware, what's going to help our defenders defend is obviously pressure up the field, and that definitely comes from the midfield. And what we've seen from the Western Bulldogs in particular, who are another handball happy team, and unfortunately, as we record, getting belted. Glum Friday for us Port fans. But one thing that we saw was their ability to make the ground wide, and again, playing at Adelaide Oval, finding those options. But as well as that, one thing that we need to be careful as a midfield group in particular is not to be sucked in to the player too often. Obviously, one player is okay, but if we try and surround them, that's where we can get exposed, because teams like this kind of want you to do that so that they can then find those options on the outside and drive the ball forward. So it'll be really interesting to see, for me, how the midfield adapts and what they've learnt from playing a Western Bulldogs, for example, who probably aren't at the same level as Sydney, but do play a similar game style in way of handball. So hopefully we've learned our lesson there. The other facet of it is we can't get exposed as much to their handball game if we've got our hands on the football. So that comes down to contested possession, which unfortunately they've got quite a buffer on their season average. I think they average about 140. Yes, they do, to our just under 123 contested possessions. And we discussed that we've made efforts to kind of bridge that gap a bit further than what we have in the last couple of years, but it's really going to take another effort. And again, maybe contributing to a Bammett inclusion, has a bit of a thirst for the contest, and goes from contest to contest. So it'll be interesting to see how we do it. But the fact of the matter is the midfield needs to turn up. because they kind of hold the keys to a lot of this, whether it be pressure, defensive pressure when Sydney does have the ball, but hopefully winning their fair share of contested possession so that we can keep the ball off Sydney, and hopefully see us expand on perhaps a bit more of an offensive game, which I hope we're going to continue to see off the back end of the bye. Because then when it gets to the forward third, our scoring efficiencies are actually quite similar between
very, very
Sydney and Port Adelaide at 53% efficiency inside 50, and that is only scoring, so scoring opportunities, and clearly Sydney have probably kicked more goals than us across the season so far.
Well, this
but
is
that's
the stat
what
to accompany that, because was that 53% scoring efficiency inside 50 for both teams? Yeah. So just before I let you go, continue. The thing with that is that Sydney's are averaging 63.1 inside 50s this year versus our 49.6. So if they're getting 14 more inside 50s a game, then they go, that's where while both teams are reasonably efficient.
53% of that is,
carry the two. No, it's, that's your point about how we need to defend, because our scoring efficiency is good, but we don't get inside 50 enough. Because our total points given up is 80.8, we score 81.9. They give up 77.5, so pretty similar numbers, but then they score 114.2. So it's like it's really just their meters gained and all that stuff, as you were saying. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there as an extra nugget of statistical rounding out of that point.
No, it's a great expansion on the topic, because those are the facts. Well, and it's hopefully something that we can not take advantage of or anything like that, but it's hopefully something we can delve into a bit more if we're using the ball a bit better. And that'll come down to skills, which we didn't display against West Coast. So look, quite hopeful that gets turned around. And I know we were all kind of admonishing our poor disposal earlier in the season. Then we go play Hawthorn at Marvel and we look very slick with the football, and our plans after that halfway point of the first quarter, our plans started to really come to fruition because we were actually using the ball effectively. Another point on the midfield, and we haven't really highlighted anyone, but it's another team statistic, is we're actually quite even from a stoppage point of view as well. And I see you nodding your head, which you've obviously got your thumb on that pulse. So even from a hit out point of view, so it'll be, again, to single out some players, Jordan Sweet, it'll be very interesting to see his performance against Brody Grundy, because, again, we won't be running a second ruck, so it'll probably be a Jack Whitlock. And I dare say Hayden McLean will back up Brody Grundy. So, Jordan Sweet will have his work cut out for him, but he tends to lift in these occasions. And I think it was only really in his first season with us that he got really exposed to the better ruckman. But hit outs around, exactly 38.8 on average each, Sydney and Port Adelaide. Clearances 35 to 36 Sydney's way. Centre 11.9 to 13.6 Sydney's way. But stoppage clearances are about just near on 23 apiece. So very interesting statistics there to consider. But then that contested possession may be the key differentiator between who gets their hands on the ball more in this matchup.
Yeah, I really think it comes down to we need to bridge the gap in that kind of just that ball movement area. And because even the turnover numbers, they actually turn the ball over more on average this season. But obviously they're going at 700 meters a game more than, or actually 800 meters a game more than us. So they're taking the game on in the way they play, and so they're going to have. So if they're only averaging 4 more turnovers than us a game, it's actually a very, very good number for them considering the way they play. you look at those hit out numbers, the clearance numbers. I'm glad you brought it up because that was probably my point to finish on. Is like though all these areas that I think we've actually gotten better at this year. It's just we've been in like we have games where we're losing stoppage, winning center clearance, and we have a game against West Coast where we get smashed in the center clearance, but win the stoppage. So the center clearance kind of is what makes the game closer than it should have been. We should have beaten West Coast by 4 or 5 goals, really, based on if everything else if we'd gotten a bit more evenness at the center. So it's really going to be, and then you look at, I'm just looking at a couple of other numbers. I lost them there for a second, but, the rebound 50s a game. They've got, averaging 6 or 7 more, but it's even bounces per game. They got like 16 bounces a game versus our 7. So it's just like, and that's probably just Nick Blakey taken off from. So, if you can lock him down, like maybe we just need to go like Jordan rules, like Detroit Pistons on Michael Jordan back in the late 80s, and just go that on Nick Blakey and just knock him out of the game and then see what happens. I don't know. It just feels like there's a particular style that they can play, and obviously we can't go Jordan rules because anyone that knows their sports history knows Jordan rules is essentially just beat the shit out of Michael Jordan and do it. Yeah. But there's a way they play that is it may just be, and that's why. And to close out, I mean, I mentioned we were both actually getting messages from our mutual friend Donnie over in the US. Shout out Donnie's disposal. He's a Sydney fan, so he's messaging us saying teams are out. What do you think? And I said, look, if we play our best footy and you guys, and we can test and maybe just strangle you guys a little bit, I still think you should win by 3 or 4 goals. Like that's just how I think where the class difference is. But we might test you if we play good footy and can strangle some of the things you do well. And that's where I'm at. I think honestly, we play our best. We have to play our very, very best, cleanest game to maybe come out with like a 10 to 15 point win, I think. And I just don't think that's likely. I'm hoping we play well enough to test them all the way through, but I think they'll just be classy enough in that scenario to still be a goal a quarter better, so to speak, and win by 4. And then I also said to him, if you bring your very, very best game and everything's clicking for you and that game style you're playing, it'll be too much for us and you win by 40 plus. That's just how I feel about their game style versus what we can do. I think they have to be slightly off, and we have to be very, very on for it to be close. And then I'd love to get a surprise morale boosting win because that would be huge for this group of players to beat a side like Sydney and the way they play. But to give you my honest thoughts, I think we play, even if we come along and play a reasonable game, I think Sydney will probably still be too good for us by the tune of 2 to 4 goals. And like I said, if things go a little bit awry and they get their run on, then it could be a little bit ugly as well, just based on just the way they're playing. It's a very, very formidable style, and one that I think we do have the tools to deal with, but things are going to have to go very, very well for us, and we're going to have to be on our game.
I think any realistic football fan would probably see it a similar way. Like Port are going to have to play footy very well across 3 lines of football. And Sydney are going to have to be tested or have a bit of an off day, maybe succumbing to their injuries. Although, I keep looking at particularly their 18, putting their bench to a side, but they're listed on field players. It's like it's talent everywhere. Their defense is probably, McCartan is a huge loss.
It is, yeah.
So
we haven't even
but that is... Joel Hamling and Harry Cunningham are experienced campaigners in their own right. So, and on the flip side, say we're defending well and say we're getting our hands on the ball and we're moving it the way that we want to see as Port Adelaide people, it's then putting the score on the board as well, which has been a bit dicey. So again, we're going to have to...
80 points since Geelong, I think. Like we're just scoring in the 70s every week, regardless of opposition, good or bad or indifferent. We're scoring in the 70s, so we're just not putting score on the board, which is what concerns me.
And part of that is inaccuracy from our true forwards, such as Mitch Georgiadis and the like, but it was also the extra contributors that a successful football club has, in goals from midfielders and getting that, 10 multiple goal kickers rather than the 7 or whatnot that we've had, 10 to 12 to, that's what we need. We need our forwards to be kicking accurately, but also getting those contributions from our midfielders. And, the likes of Zach Butters and Jason Horne-Francis are obviously going to have to play good games. We need Horne-Francis to be kicking goals. It'd be nice to see Butters get back on the goal trail, but it'd be nice to see our forwards, particularly our key forwards, working together and taking another step. It'd be nice to see Todd Marshall continue his reintegration into the forward line and Mitch to have the 4 to 6 shots on goal that we came to expect and come out the back of a pretty lean run in that regard as well.
Yeah, no, there's lots of things to look to and be excited by. I'm sure we could go even more. There's so many stats I'm looking at, but we have gone just over an hour here, and I do like to keep the preview shows just that touch shorter. But if there's anything else, keys to the game, any other major points you want to throw out there, Jamie, or are you happy to just look forward to Saturday?
Just one final point. You mentioned Nick Blakey before. We're obviously going to have to put a defensive forward or put some time into him. One really frustrating thing about that game at Adelaide Oval last year was... You up? What you doing? Although Corey Durden has been given that role on many occasions this year, and he's been doing quite well. I think Walshy and Mark Bickley brought it up to him in their interview the other day. But one of the more frustrating things about playing Sydney at Adelaide Oval last year was just the amount of space that Nick Blakey seemed to fucking have. We can't let that happen. I know it's probably what every opposition club and every fan podcast and whatnot are saying about Nick Blakey, but it's at our home ground. Let's put some work into him because he definitely does drive off the half-back line and does open them up to those scoring opportunities.
Yeah. And look, that's a great test for the coach. There's coaching group that's in their first year as well. Josh Carr and his line coaches to see, and that'll be something I'll look forward to is like how we game plan if we do have a successful day, even if it ends up in a close loss. If we do actually have a successful day of somewhat restricting Sydney and making it a frustrating one for them, I'll be quite pleased with that. So there's a lot of things to look forward to this week, regardless of how you're viewing this season, whether it's we're doing it, hashtag doing it for Dougie, or if you're looking for wins, whatever it may be, there's a lot of things, I think a lot of intriguing ways to look at the way this game is played this week, whether we get smashed off the park and we just go, well, we're shit, or if we do have a testing game or we get a surprise win, there'll be lots of things to look at. So I look forward to being back here with you all on Tuesday evening. Well, obviously a Wednesday drop for the review episode next week. Look forward to being back here with Jamie, of course, for recording on Tuesday, but also in person on Saturday evening at the Oval, wherever you may be on the Oval. Feel free to shout out if you're coming along to the game and want to say good day for a beer. Jamie and I will be around, all things going well. So, yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to hopefully not too much rain around. I didn't actually touch on that, but a bit of rain around on Saturday. So, hopefully clearing for the game for a brief period, but maybe just prepare for all conditions, I would say, being a 7:00 game and rain around. So, yeah, but massively looking forward to it. Nothing more to say, but Knicks in 5.
Yeah, go the Power. Have a good weekend, everyone, and hopefully it's a happy review.